circus that says don't eat fruits. So I'm asking them, well, what the heck are all these fruits for? The birds? All these cherries and mangoes and papayas and strawberries and grapes and all of these things. Well, what I realize is that if you eat starch, then the body cannot enjoy fruits. So most of the people who are promoting not eating fruits, they're loading up with grains, this dry grain cracker or something of that nature. But we are fruitarians by nature. And also fruits doesn't have to contain sugar. I mean, there's cucumber, which is a sugarless watermelon. So we need to relax on how we, degrade fruits in favor of especially grains, which are really seeds for cereal grass, But because we have all this modern technology and all the sprouting systems and the dehydrator and the blenders and these things like that, we confuse, the whole science of eating. But fruits and fruit sugar are ultimately what all foods need to be broken down to. So to tell someone that they should not eat grapes and feed them some buckwheat or some rye or some potatoes, which the body ultimately has to break down into a grape-like sugar, then there's something that we need to reconsider about where we got the science from.
Greetings, 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 one and all. All right, so welcome. So, y'all, I'm trying to get back in the hang of things. All right, so just bear with me as I'm getting used to being on YouTube again. All right, so welcome to MaatSpeaks. So if you are joining me for the first time or you are back with me again, my name is Maat. I am, oh, hi, Maat Shashet. So welcome. Hey, Peace. Thank you for joining me. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, so let's get started. So as you've probably seen the thumbnail, so I'm going to jump in, but there are just some things I do want to go over before we get started. So if you are new to this channel or you're coming back, I'm getting back started with my AdSpeak. So I just want to let you know that we're aimed to demonstrate how to maintain, uphold, and build a code and culture through the principles of Ma'at. And, I have plenty of videos on those principles on my YouTube channel, so you can check those principles out. But with those principles, we begin by applying those principles to ourselves. Then we extend those principles to our families and ultimately our communities. Now, as you enter this conversation, as you enter this dialogue that we have in any dialogue that we have on this channel, I always ask that you prepare to open your minds, because we have been given that filter that we're most accustomed to. And then, if you have these types of conversations, whatever side that you are on, it is always best to be able to reflect on what you may think and then also reflect on new information that you're coming to. So it's always good to be able to be offered a different perspective, and by doing that, by having conversations, by letting others be able to offer you a different perspective, that actually is a healing it's a healing conversation, right? We can consciously heal ourselves and name ourselves in a way that is native to who we are. So this channel, and that's why I started this channel. I started it to heal our community, heal ourselves, build with one another, and create an environment, a world that our children and future generations do not need to heal from. And if you have been following me, a part of the MaatSpeaks community for a while, you know that my the Generational Health Revolution is my website, but that is where business, my business, I really call it my family business, right? Because it's not just me, it's my husband, it's my children, and that's what it's about. It's about healing future generations and not just thinking about the right now, right? All right. So, as you know, if you've been a part of MaatSpeaks, there are a few ways that you can support the channel. So, I have so many things that I want to do and that I'm going to be sharing with you very, very soon. And so, the best way that you can support and help those endeavors, right, is by supporting the channel in a few ways. And I'm going to show you those ways that you can support the channel. So first, you can support the channel by just buying me a cup of tea. I love my tea. So you can go to buymeacoffee.com/MaatSpeaks, and that's how you support the channel. You can also support the channel by going to my Cash App, sending me a Cash App at MaatSpeaks. Venmo is MaatSpeaks, and my PayPal is GenerationalHealthRevolution. There are also other ways that you can support me. You can just like the video. That's a wonderful way to support the channel. The other way to support the channel is by sharing this content with other people, and just or commenting. Just there's so many ways. You have your free ways to support, and then you have your monetary ways, right? So everything that you do, whether it's a like or whether it's giving to the channel, will help support the channel. Okay, so also follow me. You can go follow me on Instagram at Generational Health Revolution. Now, I do have another channel that I did start. It's called the Psycho Priestess. So I would love if you went over to the Psycho Priestess, and I'm going to put that here. Now, the Psycho Priestess channel, y'all, it is more about fitness and health. And that is, if you don't know, I am a fitness instructor, I'm a spin instructor. So that is mainly what that channel is about. Now, I do share some recipes, like raw recipes and vegan recipes on here. But I'm going to be more sharing that on the Psycho Priestess channel more than I will be doing it on this channel. So if you like fitness, you want a holistic approach to fitness, you want more, delicious plant-based recipes, I would suggest you go over there right now and support that channel and subscribe to that channel. All right. So we're going to jump into the conversation. I had to get all of that out. And so we are going to go ahead and we're going to talk about what we came here to talk about. All right. All right. So thank y'all for joining me. If you are new here, let me know who you are. I would, love for you to connect. So just let me know who you are if you are new to MaatSpeaks. All right. All right. So let's have the conversation. So the first thing I do want to say before we jump into the conversation, because I am a holistic health guide, all right? And so, as a holistic health guide, I do offer guidance to people who are seeking to improve their health, whether that's, because they want to lose weight or it's because they have some type of sickness that they're trying to heal, all those things, right? So, but I do always ask that as we enter these conversations, that you do consult your physician for personalized medical advice. Always take the advice of a physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions regarding a medical condition. Okay, so that is just a disclaimer before we get into the conversation. All right, and so as you know, we are talking about it's called the toxic truth of veganism, right? And so I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while. And greetings, greetings. All right, so I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while, and this just has been on my mind. Now, if you saw my last live when I discussed raw, um, the raw challenge. So right now, I have a group of us. We are doing the Raw Reset Challenge, and I'm just so proud. Shout out to my group who is just killing it, doing so amazing, making their delicious raw meals. So just shout out to y'all. But one of the things that I've been thinking about within the vegan, quote unquote, vegan community, right? It has a lot to do with where we get our mindset, right? So when I entered the vegan community, so to speak, it was years ago. So I talked about my our journey as a family into veganism. And one of those things that we did, I talked about how we went from uh we stopped eating red meat, and then we went pescatarian, then we went vegetarian, and then we went to vegan, right? So lately I have been adopting the word plant-based. So a lot of times when people hear me talk, I'll say more plant-based, right? I'll say plant-based eating. And that has to do because of what the vegan community has turned into. And I say turned into, but then I have to think, well, maybe the vegan community has always kind of been like this, right? Because veganism, and especially in this country, and then from where it came from, the term vegan, it has a history, right? And so I want to talk about something that I have discussed before when it comes to veganism, and not just veganism, but as a whole, right? We have this thing, this cult mentality, and even like the herd mentality, and you see that happening especially now, right? You see it happening, this herd mentality where a lot of people go to what is what is popular, what is the norm, right? And so I was looking at, excuse me, okay. I was looking at um, the communities that we're all a part of, right? And I was looking at how much we are like cults, right? And I've spoken about this before, but I've also spoken about this, with several different people. And one of the things that I look at is how we are so much tied to this kind of cult mentality. And I do believe that it is, pieces, thank you for joining in. I do believe that it is tied to the fact that most of us, um, we were brought up in religion, right? And so what we do is, if you have left religion, even if you just left the community of religion, like the actual physical building, but if you left it in any kind of way, whether you actually left the spiritual system that you were a part of, or you stopped going to church because you don't believe in going into that type of environment, or whatever it may be, a lot of us still seek community, right? You still seek a belonging. So it's very hard for us to detach from that idea of community, or when it is very much ingrained in us as a system, right? So a lot of people will not even leave there, even if they don't believe anymore. They won't leave that community, that religion, because it's very much tied to identity, and it's tied to a sense of belonging. So I see a lot of, even within the spiritual, quote unquote, conscious community, spiritual community, we have a lot of people who are still adopting that whole, what is it, religious, um, religious mindset when it comes to even our spiritual practices and things like that, right? So one of the things that I was seeing within the vegan community is that it's the same thing. It is very like a cult, right? And so if you look at just what a cult syndrome, because I do think that we suffer from that within our community, within our society, period. I believe families can be cults. I believe businesses can be cults. I believe that almost every sect of our life has turned into like these mini cults, right? And so let's look at the definition of cult syndrome, right? So it just says that cult syndrome can include behavioral and personality changes, loss of personal identity, and estrangement from family, right? So some people who have been in different types of cults, that's what happens, right? So if you start belonging to a certain group of people, and then let's say it doesn't work out, and then or you change your mindset or whatever happens, a lot of these things happen. Or you feel that since you lost that community, who am I now, right? You're like, who am I without this community? And then a lot of people who start becoming and getting into these quote unquote cults, right? They don't have their own self identity anymore. They only identify with whatever that cult is, right? Which brings me to veganism, right? So it brings me to what I consider like this cult mentality when it comes to veganism. And so let's look at kind of this, let's kind of look at where it came from, right? So there's a history behind veganism. It's something, and I want to be very clear as far as what veganism or what veganism is versus what a lot of us in, especially in the African centered um, kind of viewpoint have when it comes to uh, how we eat, right? And so veganism really is just you stop eating meat, and usually veganism is tied to not eating meat because you feel strongly about not harming animals, right? Now, within kind of that African centered or even spiritual system, like that ideology is usually more aligned or in tune with nature, right? And so I want to look at just the the history behind veganism, right? So if you go and you look at kind of the history, you see that it was something that was started. It was actually a vegetarian society that started in England, right? And ironically, the guy who invented this vegetarian society, they said he was the inventor of graham crackers, right? And I didn't really go down this rabbit hole, but I tend to see that a lot of times when movements happen, you saw it with like the cereal companies and things like that, or the cigarette companies and stuff like that. When people have these companies, they tend to push an agenda. And so I did not go down the graham cracker rabbit hole, but I just found it very interesting that this guy who invented graham crackers was kind of like the founder of the vegetarian society in England, right? So you see that he started the vegetarian society in England. This was like 1847, right? Now, it did not actually become really a thing in the US until probably like the 1940s. And so you saw that they wanted to break away. And it's kind of an interesting thing to look at, because you saw that the people wanted to the you like the people who are in the states wanted to break away from the vegetarian society in Europe. And so that is again how these different sects are made. Like they're both kind of like cults, but they decided to break away for whatever reason. So they decided to break away, and they came up with the name vegan because they wanted to be clear that it wasn't just about not wanting meat, not wanting to eat animals, but nothing having to do with animals, right? So whether that was clothing, whether that was eggs, cheese, all of those things, they wanted to break away from that, right? So that was the clear distinction that they were making. And so when you look at even their philosophy, so let's take a look at their philosophy. I'm going to show you their philosophy real quick. Let's see, one moment here. Okay, so let's look at the philosophy. So philosophy, and I want to make sure you can see that. Okay. All right. So here's the philosophy of the vegan society. So this is the vegan society. And so it says that they were first registered as a charity in August of 1964. So you can see veganism is not, the actual term of veganism is not that old, right? So the philosophy and way of living, which seeks to exclude as far as is possible and practicable all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose, and by extension, promotes the development and use of animal free alternatives for the benefit of humans, animals, and the environment. In dietary terms, it denotes the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals. So, as you see in this statement alone, it's basically saying that we are going to do away with the exploitation of animals as it does benefit humans, right? And technically, there's nothing wrong with that statement, right? You're like, well, there's nothing wrong with, we want to stop exploiting animals. But I want to tell you something that I saw the other day, right? So I'm on Instagram and I see a post. It's beyond, right? It's Beyond Meat, and they were advertising their new sausage product, right? And so people were in the comments talking about the ingredients, right? Because if you don't know, and this is not what this discussion is about, I'm not going to get into um, the toxic practices of vegan companies, because I'm going to actually delve into that later during another conversation. But what I want to talk about is some of the things that were being said by people who are vegan, right? So one of the things, people were saying, okay, well, what about the ingredients? Like, this is not whole food, plant-based ingredients, right? And somebody was like, well, as a vegan, the only thing I care about are animals and animals dying. Some people are talking about the environment. So someone was, how people go back and forth in the comments. And so someone basically said, well, you don't care about your health. And she said, well, if I die now, maybe it was tongue in cheek. I don't know, because you don't know when something is written. You don't always know if they're being sarcastic or not. But her statement was, all I care about are the animals, because if I die, it's going to be better for the environment anyway. So that comment stuck out to me, right? Because when you are thinking about veganism or the exploitation of animals, and that alone, that to me is not enough, right? So we have to understand this ideology that we adopted. Now it's very much tied to individualism, because we can get into the concept of how people don't disregard the fact that some people cannot afford veganism. And then we have this whole industry of people where, let's say you go and try to get a Beyond Burger or whatever, because they have conditioned you to believe that a Beyond Burger is healthy, right? Or an Impossible Burger is healthy. So you've been conditioned to believe that and programmed to believe it from the commercials, from different things that have been shown to you. And then what happens is you try to go, you're like, okay, I want to get my health in order. And you go to the store, but then you cannot, I might have a family of 6, 7, 8 people or whatever, or I just might not have it. And you want me to spend 13, 14, 15, however much it is on something that is just something that I can afford. So then it becomes this idea of, who is this really for, right? Who are these products for? Because they're not for the people who desperately need it, right? Because we know that in most of our cases in our community, that a lot of the practices that are used in our community when it comes to food, when it comes to grocery stores, when it comes to the access to good quality food, that is a part of the racism that we encounter, because we don't have, for the most part, don't have that access. And so what we do in, even in our community when it comes to veganism, right? What do? We look down on others. We look down on others. Peace, peace. Peace. Good to see you, Liberated Soul. Thank you for joining in the conversation. Thank you for joining in. Where have I been? I've been living life, living life. It's good to see you. It's good to see you, brother. I have missed being here, so thank you, thank you. So it goes into that where we have lost this connection, right? Because eating, right, food should be a holistic approach, right? So in our community, most of the time, that's what we talk about. We talk about holistic approach, but then what happens is we do end up losing sight of it because we start looking down on the others, right? There was a time, and I don't know, because I've gotten out of certain like conversations, but there was a time where there were we called them the Sabians, right? Because they were the people who followed the Dr. Sabi teachings, and if you ate a pineapple, they were like they're gonna argue you down, right? Because you were eating a pineapple. Or if you ate anything that was not on the Dr. Sabi list, they're like, they'll do a whole video on you, right? Or they will argue, you see the arguments that happen in the chats, right? So again, it turns into this cult mentality, and it also turns into this mentality of, again, I attribute it to a lot of elitism in our community, in individualism. Because if we want to teach this properly, if we want to teach the mindset of living a holistic life, we have to understand the purpose of food in the first place. So we have had this conditioning around food. So when you were young, right, what you have to think about, what food was for you. So for some people in the world, food is just, about survival. There are some people who may not even eat every single day. There are some people who they're eating just to survive, right? And we have in the there's a lot of people who talk about the eat to live book, but really understanding what eating is. And eating is related to a ritual. It's an actual ritual. And so when we disconnect and we only say that we are vegans because we only care about animals, right? We only care about animals, but then we don't care about the actual human experience. We have disconnected from what food actually is and the purpose of food. And so we have to understand, how do we connect the dots in all of this? How do we connect ourselves to this holistic approach to actual food? Because I can look at a video and I can say it is inhumane the way that they treat animals, right? I can say that and I understand that. But I can also look at another video and say it is inhumane how they treat my brothers and sisters, right? So when we disconnect from ourselves, when we disconnect from what food actually is and the purpose of food, the purpose of nutrition, the purpose of our environment, the fact that we are all, everything is intertwined, right? Then we have lost the essence of who we actually are, because we have ascribed to a whole nother ideology, a whole nother system, a whole nother approach, right? Because our connection to nature has always, was always there, right? We were connected to nature. Nature, it was a balance, right? We knew that it was about living in harmony with our environment. So it was about living in harmony with the animals. Because if you live in harmony with animals, then you know, even if you are a society that did eat animals, right? Because we understand that there were, we're not going to put every country under one, especially when it comes to Africa, right? We're not going to put everything in a box and say that everybody was just eating. You can go to different times in history. Like, let's just take Kemet, right? You can go to societies, a time in Kemet where there were the leaders, they were eating animals. And then you can go to another time where there was another leader who basically said, we're not going to even do sacrifices with animals anymore, because of his position with animals, right? So you can go to those things, and you can be able to pull from them. And I always say that you have to be able to trust yourself, right? And the only way to trust yourself is to be able to put the right nutrients and foods in yourself, right? So let's talk about meat within itself, because I'm not saying that the idea of veganism is wrong or toxic. It's what it stands for, because it's still a disconnect to who we actually are. Because we understand that as we live in this society, almost everything is exploited, right? So animals are exploited, children are exploited, the land is exploited, the water is being exploited. Everything about who we are in this society is being exploited. And we understood, as African people, and a lot of you probably understand as well, right? We understood that there was no disconnect from nature and us, right? There was not a disconnect between the animals, right, and us. There was not a disconnect between the environment, the land, the trees, the water, right? These were things that we did not desire to exploit, right? Because if you exploit animals, if you exploit any part of nature, you are in turn also exploiting yourself. That's the understanding, because all of this is, and that's why I have a hard time with people who don't want to discuss the science, right? Because science and spirituality are one and the same. So the very fact that we have disconnected from nature, from spirit, right? From means that you have disconnected from yourself, which has caused also the diseases, because nothing manifests in the body unless it has manifested in the spirit, right? And so one of the things that we need to look at when it comes to our connection, or what I would call a disconnection from nature is what happens, right? So we can say the food is causing us to be diseased. And in itself, that is true because most of the things that we are eating are fake. So even when we come into the vegan side of things and we say, okay, I'm going to go eat a Beyond Burger, Impossible Burger, or any type of fake meat or fake cheese or whatever it is, right? Like it is, and it's not made from real food. You turn it over, you look at the ingredients, and it's fake food, right? There still is a disconnect there because veganism is not about you connecting with yourself. It's just purely about not exploiting animals, right? And so when you have people who are, oh, I'm not going to even say okay, but who only talk about the exploitation of animals, which you see a lot in the vegan community and other communities too, because like I said, these are cults, right? um but they don't care about the exploitation of a black child, right? Or a black woman or a black man. They don't care that someone has been killed or shot down. Then it's very hard. You know how we say it's very hard for us to connect with people. It's very hard to be a part of a spiritual system that's not for you. So how can you be a part of a food system that's not for you as well, right? And that's why I'm turning the word vegan back to their owners, right? And I did start adopting the word plant-based, but they're taking that word over too, right? Because anything can be plant-based, right? So you can make something, right? And you can say the base of it is a plant, but truly it's still full of chemicals, And so I have been adopting the word living foods because that is what I think that we truly need to be looking at as far as what makes sense to us mentally. So mentally, it makes sense for you to eat something, right? That is living, right? And as you are absorbing that living food, it is actually nourishing you, right? Because the thing is, when it comes to disease and something manifesting itself, and we say it's from the food, but it's also because we are also allowing the exploitation um, of our environment, of ourselves. And I'm not saying that you're allowing it in the sense of like you have the gun too, or you're doing it, but some people will say it doesn't matter if I stop eating meat, right? Because the thing is already dead, it's already in the store, it's already packaged up. But we do understand the mentality of supply and demand. And so, for me, and I never, anyone who works with me and knows me, like even the people who are in my detox group know, I never tell anyone they have to stop eating meat. That's not my thing. I don't do that. When I was new to the game, I probably was like that, but I never tell anyone that they have to do it, right? Because I also know what food means, and we have to understand that ritual that we partake in every single day. So your rituals do say a lot about you, right? So when you rise every day, and whatever your ritual is as you rise, because your rituals are supposed to be something that is seen in your everyday life. Yes, rituals are important, but what do you do? Like, what do you do after you come out of that ritual, right? And we have to understand all the rituals that we partake in, whether it's food, whether it's relations that we have with others, the things that we talk about with other people. All of these things are different rituals that we partake in. And one of the things that we have to understand is the things that we don't speak up about. because we can sit and we can watch something and we can say it's horrendous, right? And then a few weeks later, we're done with it, And so then what happens? Because we're cutting ourselves off, right? So then disease does come from the fact that we're not speaking up on the fact that our community is not being served properly, but is also being exploited. So that also comes up as disease. It's not just the food, but it's also the fact that you are not speaking up on the exploitation of the things that are around you. So like even when it comes to your, heart disease, yes, it's the food, right? But it's also the things that we are not doing collectively, right? And so a lot of people would say, because I know the first thing people would say, like the fact that we are using technology, the fact that we're on our computers, the fact that we're on our phones means that someone has been exploited for the use of these things, right? And I know for me, I speak about it with friends and family all the time about the desires that we have. And I think the mere fact that we have these conversations on YouTube, even though right, YouTube is not our platform. But we have these conversations in order to build with one another, because a lot of us do want to seek a life outside of what we are used to, right? So we use these things, we use computers and phones and technology, we use things that we know other people have been exploited in order for us to use those things. So one of the key things we have to do is acknowledge the exploitation that happens. We have to acknowledge those things and we have to speak on those things. But also another part of it is what is in your power, right? A lot of times people will put a lot of fear in you. And I don't think people should move off of fear, right? You should move off of empowerment, right? I have the power to do this. I have the power to eat properly. I have the power to, I have the power to not use uh this technology at this part of the day or whatever. I have the power to shut everything off. It's kind of like, how much can I stay outside of this matrix as possible, instead of always saying, well, it's here. So every people are on it, it's being used. So I'm going to use it because just little old me is not, just little old me, I can't do anything, right? And so understanding the um the complexities, and because I remember an elder saying that, um and I don't, this is not, this is like, I feel like a lack of a better term. um I remember him saying that everybody is cooning at something, right? Because we're all doing something within this system, because this is the system we're in, right? And until we can be able to create another system, here we are, right? Having to participate in the system. And so I think if you're a willing participant, I think that's the difference. What is your intention when you are in this environment? Are you a willing participant of the exploitation? Can you look at it and see what is wrong with the things that are being exploited, the animals, right? The environment, you yourself, right? And understanding what that actually looks like, when it comes to um, how you can be a part of the system of change, right? So, when it comes to the term veganism, and I'm not going to like lie to you, right? I will use the word time to time, to explain things, or I may use the word because that's what the algorithm has out there. The algorithm has the word vegan. And, all of that is a part of the programming that we all have, right? And we are going to talk. So, right now, we're in a reset. So, my conversations are mainly surrounding health because the group that I have, we've been doing a reset. We are on our fourth day of the actual reset. Last week was prep week. And so we have been, discussing just different ways that we can begin to incorporate more nutrition into our bodies. But we do know that the connection also has to be an emotional thing, because a lot of us eat out of our emotions as well, right? So understanding that we do not separate our nutrition and put it in its own separate box is very much still connected to who we are, to um, the way we operate in this world, our spiritual body. And so when you eat, you can't just think that you're feeding your physical body. You have to also understand that you're feeding your spiritual body. And, when you feed your emotions, what that is actually doing to you. Can you stop and process your emotions before you eat? I have a video on here, and on my AppSpeaks, and I did it. It was like probably 2 years ago when I put the video out, and I talked about that. I talked about, even, you shouldn't even be eating at a very happy state. Like, you shouldn't be extremely happy when you eat, and you shouldn't be extremely sad. You should be balanced when you are eating a meal, right? And the reason because you should be balanced when you're eating a meal is because if you do become sad or angry, your brain is going to say, hey, I want to go back to that time that I was happy. And it's going to pull from those moments where you maybe been at a family gathering and you were eating pizza or a hamburger or ice cream. Is going to pull from those times when you were a child, and your grandparents or your mother or your aunt took you to McDonald's, right? And you were excited to go to McDonald's because they gave you that as a treat. It's going to pull from those moments, right? And so when you get in a very emotional state, you're going to want to go to those times where you had that food or had that drink. Okay. So I'm going to close out very soon. I do appreciate y'all for listening to me and joining me tonight. I want everyone to understand before I close just how important it is to approach your nutrition from a holistic. That's why we always talk about whole foods, right? Because if I was introduced to veganism as it has become, because when I was introduced to it, and maybe it was just my algorithm at the time, there was no such thing. I won't say it was no such thing. There was not a lot of what we call transitional foods, right? And I don't believe that transitional foods are actually transitional foods. I believe that when you give somebody an Impossible Burger or a Beyond Burger, or what's something else that I'm trying to think, I can't think of. Those are the things that come to the top of my head. When you give people those things, it still is feeding their addiction, right? And I'm not going to say I've never eaten those things, right? But I know when I was introduced to eating whole foods, and if you listen to most of the master teachers, they don't call themselves vegans, right? They don't. They talk about um, the holistic approach to food and nutrition. So understanding how much of your nutrition should be a part of your life as a holistic approach, right? Just like you rise every day and you brush your teeth, right? Why do you brush your teeth, right? It's the same thing, and that's a ritual within itself, right? People who don't brush your teeth, you've seen those videos on social media that people don't brush their teeth or don't wash their face or don't wash their hair, and why? And usually it comes from a place of depression. And so we have to look at it as that as well as far as our food. Why do we eat certain foods, right? So understand the different levels of what we're doing in these different communities and just give these people their words back, right? You didn't have to call yourself a vegan in order to understand that you cared about your environment, you cared about your community, you care about animals, right? Most people do have a concern, a care about their environment to a certain level. So, a lot of vegans will get on to others and saying, well, you don't really care because if you cared, you wouldn't be eating meat. But we have to understand the conditionings, the programmings that we've all been accustomed to, right? And we have to let people take that journey. We have to let people walk down, walk the walk that they need to walk, right? I know I had to accept it for myself. And then even with our children, we introduced the information to our children and they wanted to accept. Now, for me, I do believe the way that food is produced in this society is extremely toxic. And what upsets me is when with the so-called vegan community, is that we have a lot of people in our community who are also accepting the toxic practices of the mass production of processed foods and meats, right? So when you have something and then you're creating something and you're making people believe that it's healthier, that is exploitation as well. So you can say people are exploiting animals, but then we're also exploiting each other, right? So we're going to talk about that as well. I have me and my sister, we're going to be talking about um those business practices as well, because that is important to understand too, because we can talk about the exploitation of animals all day, but when you tell a person that eating a Beyond Burger or an Impossible Burger is healthier, so they go to the store and they spend their money and they think maybe they're going to lose weight, right? Because that's what veganism has kind of turned into itself, right? Most people are going vegan because they want to lose weight. So when you offer them something that's vegan and people think, oh, well, this is a healthier version, it's not meat, so that means I'm going to lose weight. And then what do you see? You see that they're still having issues with their health because you have not given them the actual tools that they need to heal themselves. You just get given them a different version. You've given them really a faker version, right? You've given them a version that is still toxic to their bodies and toxic to their health, right? So I'm not going to keep going on and on, right? But what I will say is that it is important for us to adopt a living foods um, mindset, right? Even if it's not 100%, even if you say, you know what, I'm not going to, I can't do 100% just plants, right? Or just, it's still important to adopt living foods, because when you understand what living foods can do to your body and do for your body, right? And you understand how it helps the world around you and your environment in the generations that come after you. We do not have to continue to keep saying that certain diseases are in our community if we adopt a certain lifestyle that is going to help our environment, is going to help our community, is going to help the people around us, it's going to help us not succumb to all these different diseases, right? And so I'm going to end there. I will, what I do want to say before I go is that I do have something special that I will be discussing next month. It's going to be when I begin the new series. So right now we're discussing wellness, we're discussing health, and then we will be most likely going into education and discussing education as far as educating ourselves, right? And so I'm very excited about that. And so I'll have some news when that comes. And I just want to thank you for joining me. I'm excited to be back on my Speaks. I have missed you. And so I will be playing around with which days I do want to go live. Right now, it's either going to be between Sunday and Thursday. So if you have a preference, let me know. Just comment if you want to join the conversation. You say, "Well, my Sunday works better for me." Then we'll talk about Sundays. But if you like Thursdays, let me know if you like Thursdays. But I am going to go ahead and sign off. I do appreciate you all for being here with me. I will see you soon. Take care of yourselves. And if you want to join the Raw Reset, I will leave that information in the description. You can jump right in. It's full of so much good information. So I would just say jump right in, join, even if it's just so that you can get the information. I would jump in. All right. So I'm going to end there. I'll see you soon. Peace.